What's up everybody, Nate here, and China and Russia are currently working together to create a brand new reserve currency for the entire world. Now this comes at a very interesting time considering the United States' major inflationary problems, the war between Russia and Ukraine, and of course the United States starting to drop in GDP while China and other nations are actually beginning to gain economic influence all throughout the planet. Now the US dollar is the reserve currency of the world, but if it's challenged on the global stage, well, that could essentially mean that we could see a complete flip of the world order as we know it. So today I want to break down this brand new reserve currency, what it's all about, and what that is all going to mean for the US dollar and our economy going forward. So I kind of want to start by breaking down this new reserve currency and what exactly that would mean. So right now, China and Russia are working with a variety of other nations, such as Brazil, India, and South Africa. The reserve currency would be based on all of the values of those currencies, and it would allow the countries to essentially gain a whole lot more influence over their areas. Now, it's a really interesting time for China and Russia to be doing this because their kind of relationship has changed a lot over the last year or so, particularly from the Russian side. Obviously, when Russia invaded Ukraine, a lot of Western nations, including the United States, issued several sanctions against the country, and there was a long period of time and a lot of debate over how Russia was going to pay back its debt. The United States wanted them to pay it back in US dollars, but they said that the only way they would do that is in rubles. Because of all of these sanctions and because the US dollar was basically kept from Russia, that caused Russia to have a lot of economic problems, which was the whole goal of the sanctions. The ruble dropped in value by nearly 70 to 90%. And it kind of forced Russia to do a lot more business with other countries like North Korea, the countries that I mentioned, and of course, China. Right off the bat, a new reserve currency for the world basically screams value. It means that all of those nations are exclusively going to use that currency, and any nation that they do business with is going to have to accept that currency. What that does is kind of make all of this money basically circulate throughout the globe, and if everybody's using certain money, especially across state borders, well, then that means that money is extremely valuable. Now, the US dollar has been the reserve currency of the world since around 1945 or just after World War II, but recently the United States dollar has had a lot of problems with inflation over the last couple of years. This has made some major countries like China start to distance themselves from the US dollar. At the end of the day, these countries want to hold assets and currencies that are going to gain value and are going to continue to be something that other countries want to use. And with the United States dollar essentially losing tons of value, well, other countries are going to start adopting other currencies. This new currency that China and Russia are working on could ultimately become that reserve currency that all other countries use across the world. It is essentially the staple for international business and not the US dollar. And I know that seems kind of funny because if you look at the US dollar and its value, pretty much everybody wants US dollars and our country is very strong, but things have started to shift in a new direction for not only the US economy, but for the entire globe. What actually makes a world currency or a reserve currency? Well, that currency has to have a lot of value. People want to have it, and the reason that they want to have it is because one, it has a lot of value, or two, it's easy to transact. The US dollar is super easy to transact because it's just paper. The United States Federal Reserve can print as much of this paper money as they want, but that also means that it's highly inflationary. Because so much money is printed, prices go up because now people have so much money to buy things that they continue to just, well, go out and buy things. But money can also have a lot of value. So when the United States was on the gold standard, which ended during the 1970s under Nixon, every single dollar that existed, well, there was a gold bar held in Fort Knox for that dollar. There was literal value in gold because gold is something that is not easy to produce. You can't just flip on the switch and print a bunch of it. It takes time, money, and effort to actually produce gold, so it has that inherent value. Obviously, though, gold is not easy to transact. Like, you can't just walk into a store with several bars of gold and try to spend that money. So it wasn't a super easy way for the United States to grow. That's why we switched off of the gold standard. We want to try to maximize our GDP, and the only way to do that is to have a whole bunch of money. You can't lag behind gold growth. So the United States went away from that. Now we can print as much money as we possibly want, and that is a problem on the global stage. Inflation has become a problem for the United States, and all of these other countries that the US does business with, well, they just don't want to hold US dollars. Like China in particular, one of our largest debt holders, is actually decreasing the amount of debt that it holds in US dollars. This is because US dollars are extremely inflationary, so the value of them is going way down. All of these other countries around the world at the end of the day want to diversify their portfolios, and they want to have money that is really, really valuable. Not only that, but across the sea and across the globe, there are emerging markets, and China over the last 15 to 20 years has become a global superpower and is starting to get even bigger in terms of GDP in order to challenge countries like the United States, the current world order. Ray Dalio talks a lot about this in his Principles of Dealing with the Changing World Order book, and he essentially says that every single country has gone through basically these waves of rising and declining over time. And right now he would argue that the United States is currently in its decline. China is currently on the rise and is nearing their apex. Basically, our GDP is starting to shrink and their GDP is starting to surpass ours. Now, it's not exactly there yet, but it's getting pretty close. The United States dollar has been able to stay the reserve currency of the world for this long because, one, we have really strong GDP. No one's GDP in the world is higher than the United States, and that means that anyone that holds US dollars is going to continue to see that value, and they're going to want to continue to put money and to continue to put debt into the US so they can get a return from that. And of course, the United States military. We have a very strong military, and it reaches all throughout the world, but other countries are growing their military and they're starting to grow their monetary influence. During the decline for a country, according to Ray Dalio, they start printing a whole lot of money. Every single time they have a disaster, they go into something called easy money policies. They essentially print a whole lot of money. They stimulate the economy by lowering interest rates, and that drives up GDP and it drives up economic growth. But it's really all artificial because you are doing everything yourself. Nothing is coming naturally because that money didn't exist before, and all of this demand didn't exist before. It was basically shoved into the economy. And you can't keep that forever because eventually you have to stop those things. You have to stop stimulating the economy, or else you're going to have inflation running rampant. Over the last 2 years, we have definitely seen that with lots of free money and easy money policies. Ray Dalio believes that this is going to be a problem for established nations like the United States as they struggle to figure out new ways to fix problems in the future. It's so easy to just turn that money printer on because that basically solves a lot of these financial problems and economic issues for a country. But eventually, though, having a strong military and having a strong economy is not enough. Eventually, a country or a series of countries is going to challenge the dominant nation on the planet for the spot of a reserve currency and, of course, to change that world order. And right now, that is starting to happen on the global stage between the United States and China. China is not only trying to extend its political reach all throughout the world, we're starting to see this with them talking about taking over Taiwan, but they also want the monetary side, working with other countries to establish a new reserve currency. This is not something that happens overnight, and it's important to mention here that China's economy is in a really bad spot right now because of real estate blunders, and they also have inflation problems of their own, and their GDP is not going going up as fast as it was before pre-pandemic. The pandemic wiped out a lot of progress for China, but eventually I think that they're going to get right back there. So I think that bought the US a lot of time, but we also have a lot of social problems and a lot of financial problems all throughout the country, and that's going to shape our future, and it's going to decide whether we stay the reserve currency or not. This is super important for you. I mean, this is not just countries and global stuff. This matters for you if you have US dollars. If the US dollar was not the reserve currency of the world anymore, then that means the value has significantly decreased. With the value significantly decreasing, well, that just means that every single dollar that you have isn't worth as much, and that translates to you not being able to buy as much. You now have to make a whole lot more money in order to buy all of the same things. And ultimately, this is what happens with the current world order, and eventually what is going to happen with the United States. Emerging markets can't stay emerging forever, and eventually they continue to get stronger, because think about exactly what they're doing. They are taking the US dollar and investing that. They are using our money in order to get themselves a whole lot stronger. Meanwhile, here at home, well, we're taking a lot of that money and sending it elsewhere so that we can get stronger on the cheap. Now, there's nothing inherently right or wrong about that. It really just depends on how you view money. If you view money as a store of value, then this is bad. But if money is just something for transacting with, well, then you just need a whole lot more of it. And some of the ways you can get more of it is by investing, putting your money to work for you, or investing in other things like gold and other precious metals, and of course, making more money at your job and things like that. But at the end of the day, what creating a new reserve currency does is take a lot of the influence and monetary influence away from the United States, and it gives it back to a lot of these other countries, meaning we could start seeing some major changes on the global stage sometime soon. But now I want to hear from you on this issue. What do you think about this world order essentially changing sometime soon? Do you think that the United States dollar will always remain the reserve currency of the world? Or do you think that some other currency, like in China or Russia, is eventually going to take its place? Whatever your thoughts are, leave a comment below before you go. But that is it for today's business and financial news breakdown. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to stay up to date with all the top business and financial news from around the country, our team puts together a free daily newsletter, and you can subscribe to it by clicking the link in this corner right here. And if you want to stay up to date with me and everything else happening in the business and financial world, I'm putting out updates 7 days a week over here on this channel, and I've actually got another one ready for you right here, so be sure to check that out before you go. That is it for me, everybody. Be kind out there, and I'll see you all in the next one.